Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another week of breakdown and predictions. This week, it's for Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Huge cry from what we had last week. Last week, man, that card was amazing. I went to that card live. That was like one of my favorite cards I went to live. Maybe one of the best UFC cards of all time, UFC 290. Just in terms of the action in the cage, that was really incredible. And shout out to everyone that was fighting on that card. But hopefully, this card, produces some similar type of fireworks in the cage, but in terms of name value, it's kind of lacking for sure. But let's get the likes up on this video. Let's try to get over 100 likes. Let's try to get some comments. And besides that, man, let's get into the first fight of the night here. And if you want Patreon, go to patreon.com/patreon or patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. Got quite a few bets for this fight card, actually. This is one of my favorite fight cards of the year so far for UFC for betting. I think there's quite a few good spots, some lines that are off. So definitely intrigued from that standpoint. But this first fight of the night, we got Ashley Evans-Smith taking on Aline Perez. OnlyFans Fighting Championships fight. Ashley Evans-Smith, she hasn't fought in a long time. Pretty much has been a part-time fighter since like 2017. She fought one time in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And since then, she hasn't fought in 2.5 years. She had to battle through some injuries, had to use USADA suspension. I believe she had spine surgery, which seems pretty serious, but she's definitely a fighter who you have to respect for past accomplishments. But she had her first fight in 2010. She's 36 years old now. Back in 2015, 2016, before then, Smith was a pretty legit fighter, but she just hasn't shown that same ability recently. And she has been fighting top flight competition, so this is a step down. 4 of her 5 losses have came against girls that were ranked in the top 10, and she does have 2 losses in a row, but they came to Andrea Lee and Norma Dumont, who are both respected names, and Aline Perez is a far cry from both those girls. And Aline Perez, she came into the UFC, she was talking a lot, she was feeling very confident, she thought she was already arguably the best 145-pound fighter in the world, and her first UFC fight, I believe, was an eye-opener for her, because definitely was a humbling loss. She fought Stephanie Egger, who wasn't even ranked, and before that fight, mind you, she was calling out girls like Amanda Nunes, saying she was ready for the belt, and ended up being fairly competitive in the grappling, but eventually got caught and submitted in the second round. And since that fight, Perez didn't have a fight scheduled for quite a few months, and then she ended up getting a fight with Haley Cowan. That fight fell through on fight day or very close to fight day, and she hasn't fought in 10 months now. So I'm not sure why it took almost 5 months for Perez to book a fight after the Cowan fight didn't happen, but hopefully she's used that time to keep improving. She's been at MMA Masters, which is a camp that has a lot of girls right now that are doing really well, like Priscilla Cachoeira went on a little streak with them. Obviously, Amanda Nunes just recently had her whole camp with them. Ariane Lipsky just got a couple upset wins. So they've been doing some good work over there. And both these girls are going to be fighting at 145, or fought at 145, in their last fight. And this fight's going to be at 135. So hopefully they're in better shape. They're a little sharper. And they fight similar. They're tough, gritty. They like to wrestle and mix it up. I think Ashley Evans-Smith's striking isn't bad. She isn't the fastest. She doesn't have the greatest defense, but she has good hands offensively, good feints, good jabs, double jabs. She'll throw nice combos. She does a good job attacking the body. On the inside, she has good uppercuts, knees, elbows, and she can throw kicks too. She has good kicks with that back leg, tricky head kick, front kicks, round kicks to the body. But she doesn't move her head. She really, I believe, is kind of slow, and I think that allows girls to land on her. And she could take damage and stick in there. She's never been finished by strikes, but you could see through her long career of MMA, she's starting to show the damage in her face. Like, her nose tends to break a lot, and she usually starts fast. She could be sharp enough and have good pop, but she starts to gas and become less active. And when her activity goes down, that's where you see her hit ability start to be more apparent, her speed differential from her opponent start to be more apparent, and she starts to get beat up and hit a lot. But she used to be a good wrestler. She isn't as active with the wrestling in recent years, but good timing on the double. And on top, she has good heavy top pressure. She is good at holding girls down, but she tends to shoot really ugly takedowns when she gets tired, which puts her on her back, and she can end up in bad positions. She's a good scrambler. She has some okay get-ups, and her last fight with Norma Dumont, she was the way smaller girl in that fight, and I think that played a factor, but she struggled in the clinch. She got taken down. She gave her back, and she got held down for the majority of the second and third rounds, but in this fight with Aline Perez, that's going to be where she definitely doesn't want to be. That's where Perez lives. That's where Perez is at her best. So Ashley Evans-Smith is going to have to try to keep it standing. And hopefully she comes in this fight in better shape down at 135. But 36 years old, coming off a layoff, it's hard to be super confident in that. And when you look at Perez, she's a grinder. She has good kicks. And I believe she's much faster than AES. Ashley Evans-Smith, she has a wide stance, and she hardly throws punches, though. She mainly just throws a left hook or a big overhand. And she uses those fast kicks or front kicks, round kicks, side kicks to back girls up and then try to take them down. She does have a head kick knockout, so as I said, her kicks are her most dangerous asset on the feet. And her hands did look better against Stephanie Egger. She even rocked Egger with the spinning back fist, so obviously she's improving there. And I think she's athletic enough and has the aggression and power to have potential as a striker. And she's strong for the weight. She's physical. She has pretty good takedowns in the clinch. And when she gets on top, she's mean. She has heavy ground and pound. She likes to get into the mount, the crucifix, and she's finished a lot of girls on the ground. But she's fought a lot of lower-level opponents, and she showed bad fight IQ as well in certain fights. Like, she got DQ'd for repeated fouls against Tamiris Vidal, where she was throwing illegal strikes on the ground. But she did manhandle Vidal, who's proven to be a good fighter, but I do believe Vidal has improved majorly since that fight. And in her last fight with Stephanie Egger, I feel like she looked more explosive, Perez. She got an early takedown. She was able to reverse when she got put on her back and get back up. Even got a takedown again in the second round. But she just couldn't stop the judo throw from Egger and ended up losing the grappling battle. Got submitted. And she's a girl who's younger and I believe has the bigger chance to have leveled up, especially training with MMA Masters. As I said earlier, they've been doing a really good job with the females. And the line opened at Perez at minus 450, which was insane. And it's closed majorly to Perez being at like minus 190 now. And I feel like that's probably about correct. Just with the youth, I believe that she's going to be a little bit hungrier, want it more. I don't really know where Ashley Evans-Smith is at in her career. She has been involved in MMA like through commentary and things like that. And you could tell she's definitely passionate about the sport, and to come back after those injuries, she looks in great shape too. So she definitely has a chance, but I just believe with the performances that she's been giving recently, the layoff and everything attached to it, I think that Perez is the safer pick, and I'm going to pick Perez to win this one by decision. In this next fight, we got a battle of two guys that are still looking to get their first UFC victories. Alex Munoz, he's 0-2 so far in his first two UFC fights, so he's in a must-win situation here. Carl Deaton, he's 0-1, so a little bit more leeway, but with his age and his resume, I believe that it's also a loser leaves town match for him potentially. And Munoz, he's fighting a guy that's definitely a step down in competition. He's fighting a journeyman type opponent here, veteran. His last two fights, he was fighting more younger, up-and-coming type prospect fighters. So he's the favorite here. And hopefully he's healthy and competes well. He hasn't fought in over a year. And he's also 33 years old, the same age as Deaton. So he's not young himself. So that's something that definitely needs to be taken into account. But we'll see how he looks. And Carl Deaton, 26-fight veteran. He had 25 fights on the regional scene. Got the short notice call into the UFC. And he took his licks. He got stopped in the first round by Joe Selecki. But it got his foot in the UFC door. Now it's his chance to walk through it or get it slammed in his face right here. And it's just, a questionable resume. So I assume a loss is going to be him being out of a job. But he's a tricky striker. He has good head movement. He has a decent left hook, right hand, and Deaton is explosive. He is able to close the distance quick. He has some power. So he does a good job as well as attacking the body to open up the head. So he's a little bit tricky, but doesn't check leg kicks. He definitely struggles against fighters who can finesse him, stick and move, and use lateral footwork. Only a 67-inch reach, which is a big issue for him at lightweight. So he is the more experienced and composed fighter. And if he could pressure for 3 rounds and make it a dogfight, then I do believe he's going to have the better conditioning at the end of the match. And he can also wrestle. He was able to out-wrestle Justin James. He controlled Justin James. He's a UFC veteran, a decent enough wrestler. And when he can get on top, Deaton, he is effective with his top control. A lot of his wins are choke victories. And I've seen Deaton take bad shots, too, that put him on his back against Joe Selecki. He got dealt with quick in the grappling. And he's facing a wrestling-based opponent in this fight. I believe he should look to strike more. His takedown defense is pretty good. It should be more on point in this fight after a full camp with Selecki. He only had a couple weeks or even less than that to get ready. And he ended up surviving the first round. He showed decent defense to rear naked chokes. But in round 2, ended up giving his back again and got choked out. But Selecki's a pretty high-level grappler. And Deaton, he's a veteran. He always comes in shape. And he's going to be a difficult out for some of these prospects. But when you look at Deaton, he doesn't really have a great resume. He has beaten some guys like he did beat, like I said, Justin James. He beat Troy Lamson, who I believe is a similar level to Alex Muniz, and he's also a Team Alpha Male guy, but I think Munoz is a little bit better. And, Alex Munoz, he has good footwork, speed, and he's pretty good everywhere. He isn't that dangerous, but kind of good point fighting style on the feet. He moves well side to side. He can switch stances, pot shots, which is historically what gives issues to Deaton. And when fighters come in, try to sit down on something, then Munoz will bring out the wrestling and try to time the takedown. But he has a good jab, decent cross. He likes to attack the body as well. And he has pretty good calf kicks, body kicks. He doesn't really have a lot of power. So if you could pressure through his strikes and stuff the takedowns, we've seen guys kind of wither him and beat him up. And in this fight, he's going to be a lot faster. I think he's going to need to use his footwork to pull counter, pull Deaton into punches, kicks, and then eventually time the takedowns. He has a nice double leg, and he's kind of a basic wrestler, average top control. He doesn't really have a submission threat. And I haven't seen Munoz threaten with too many submissions. But Team Alpha Male guy, I believe he's going to be ready to defend chokes and have really good scrambles. And his cardio is on point. He's never been finished. We did see Hack Press cut the cage off and outbox him. And he doesn't seem like he likes to be hit, and he tends to panic wrestle when he does. So he needs to move, use low kicks, fight smart, try to avoid that power of Deaton. Deaton is the more dangerous guy, but I think Alex Munoz is faster, the better wrestler. I think the calf kick should come into play, and I think Deaton's going to have issues with that lateral movement, and I think Munoz's ability to mix it up is ultimately going to be the downfall of Deaton. Unless Deaton can hurt or take Munoz out early or make it a dog fight, I see him losing the decision over 15 minutes. So I'm going with Alex Munoz. Next match, we got a flyweight fight with Tyson Nam taking on a UFC newcomer in Azat Maksum. And Tyson Nam is one of the most powerful, experienced fighters in the flyweight division. Been in the cage with the best of the best, and he's had mixed results. His style is dangerous but basic, and it never changes. Coming off a loss to Bruno Silva, and he's 39 years old, so it's pretty incredible he could still fight to this level at 125 pounds, but he has a very tough matchup here. And he's difficult to break, or easy to break down, and there isn't really a lot to say about him. He's big for flyweight. He had a lot of fights at 135, and he likes to walk guys down, try to land those counter right hands. He has one-punch knockout power, so when he lands, he could put your lights out, but very low volume. Other than that right hand, he has a good head kick. He will try to throw some low kicks, but he isn't the fastest guy, and that's why he tends to rely on timing and kind of one-shot KOs. 13 knockout wins. He's 7-9 in decisions, so when it goes to decision. He doesn't really have a great record. And he paces himself well. He doesn't really do much, so his cardio is going to hold up for 3 rounds, and his power is going to be there. And he has good takedown defense. His last fight, he did get submitted, but that was after getting dropped with the front kick to the face. And it's hard to judge how Nam looked on the ground because he was hurt prior to getting choked, but he usually has pretty good submission defense. And he's a guy that can never be discounted because he's going to have that puncher's chance. But his opponent, 16-0, and Azat Maksum, he is very little to dislike about him. I mean, he hasn't competed on the biggest shows like outside of Russia, but besides that, he's beaten some solid opponents, and this is going to be his US and UFC debut, so it's going to be his first impression on American fans and international fans worldwide. And he's a very technical fighter. He's big for the weight. He's tall. And he's patient. He likes to feint, cut the cage off. He doesn't open up a lot until he can back guys up. And defense, distance control are on point. And you can tell he has pretty big power. He's earned some knockouts, knockdowns, good overhand straight right. And he could be low volume, and really all he's looking for is the overhand to the takedown or the straight right to the takedown. And if he can land it clean and knock you out, then even better. But low volume, but when he throws, he makes it count, and he stays tight defensively. And he looks to mix it up. He has a great double against the cage. In top position, he's a monster, crushing top pressure, heavy ground and pound. He has good submissions, and he's a beast. I haven't really seen a lot of weaknesses out of him yet, but this is going to be his first kind of major league opponent, let's say. So I think it's a super winnable fight just because with Nam, you know what you got to do to beat him, and that's just avoid the power. And Azat is the superior fighter. He's much younger. He's more in his prime. And let's see, his UFC jitters or just gets caught with a big shot, he should win in a dominant decision, or even, I believe he could club and sub Nam in this one as well. So it's a fight that I think Azat could win by decision. I'll say he wins by submission in the second round. And in this next fight, we got another fight where two guys are looking to get their first UFC victories. More of a prospect fight. Valdez is 31, but Elder is 26. And both these guys are 0-2 in the UFC, but they fought hammers. Valdez, he fought Matt Frevola and Natan Levy, two guys that have great stand-up. And Frevola knocked him out early, which he's been doing to a lot of guys recently. And Natan Levy, Valdez looked a little better, but still clearly lost the fight. His last win came over 2 years ago at this point, or almost 2 years ago, when he beat Patrick White in one of the craziest fights in Dana White Contender Series history. And Elvin Elder, he got super unlucky in his last fight. He was up 2-0 on all scorecards, but a cut in the third round early ended up ending the fight, gave his opponent the victory. And he looked a lot better in comparison to his debut against Preston Parsons. He's only 26 years old. He's training out of Killcliff FC. So he's a lot of potential, and that's why he's a pretty big favorite here. But I think it's going to be a great fight. I think both fighters are going to come out desperate, make it an all-action contest. And Valdez, tough neck skin, good speed, nice straight shots down the middle, 1-2s. He's very aggressive, and he's a brawler. He wants to goad guys to sit in the pocket and just go to war. And he has power, but his defense is not good, very hittable. Even though he looks a little bit better in his last fight defensively, you know if someone wants to just throw down with him, he's going to go back to that. And he isn't a great kicker. He doesn't have great takedown defense or get-ups evident from his last fight either. But the striking was competitive, and Valdez landed a lot of good head strikes against a very good striker in Natan Levy. But got taken down in the second and third, held down, and that's what he needs to avoid with Evan Elder. Cardio-wise, Valdez, he has fantastic cardio. He looks to push the pace. And Evan Elder, he's a great athlete. He's fast. He has good footwork. He has bad defense, though, and he's still green. But he does a good job attacking a lot of areas. He has nice leg kicks, good front kicks, round kicks to the body. He'll bring those kicks up to the head. He has nice kind of drive-by punches, 1-2 shot, 3-shot combos, and then getting out of the way. He's kind of a pot shotter, but doesn't have great boxing and holds his hands really low. So he's going to have to get better with that. And in terms of boxing, And when they're in kind of the pocket, Valdez is going to have a pretty significant advantage. Elder has power, though, and that kind of could maybe make up for that. But he needs to keep his feet moving, touch and go, and if he could time the takedowns, that's going to be his easiest path to victory. He has good wrestling. He can use his dart in, dart out striking style to kind of enter and on the level changes. And he has good top control. He should be able to dominate if he can get on top and hold Valdez down. I don't really know if he could finish him, but I think he can hold him down. And he's super tough. He proved that in his last 2 fights. He could take damage. He has a lot of heart. And cardio-wise, he's in great shape as well. So I don't see him getting tired from pushing a high wrestling pace if that's what he needs to do. And I believe Elder's the more well-rounded fighter with the wider striking arsenal. And, he's gritty. He's going to be there for Valdez. He's a guy that has a puncher's chance, but if Elder fights smart and mixes it up, he can win a decision or maybe even find a finish. But I'm going to say it's a 30-27 decision, and I feel like the line is a little bit off, but I got to go with the Elder here. I just think he's going to be able to use his wrestling in this one to get the job done. In this next fight, hopefully we're finally going to see Jack Della Maddalena in the octagon. He had 2 different matchups last week fall through. One of them with Josiah Harrell was a really unfortunate situation where something came back on Harrell's CT scans, I believe, or something medical. I don't really want to speculate because I don't know 100%, but something bad happened where they caught it. He wasn't able to fight, and, thank God they did. But Sean Brady and Jack Della were supposed to fight originally, and that would have been a banger, but Sean Brady got injured, and now he's fighting 1 week later, Jack Della, against a UFC newcomer and Basil Hafez, who doesn't have a lot of time to come in here and try to fight a guy of Jack Della's caliber. But I will say it's a much tougher opponent than Josiah Harrell. This is a guy that had to draw with Jeremiah Wells, that's beaten UFC veterans and is currently the Fury FC champion. And he is definitely the better grappler in this fight. It's just how much has he been training? What has he been doing? And is he going to be able to show his full skill set here and make this a competitive fight, or it's going to be a walkover for Jack Della? Because Hafez, even when he has full camps, and it's kind of strange because he trains at elevation, he still tends to get tired. So that's something that's going to be a big issue for him here against Maddalena. And but when they match up, Maddalena is the way better striker. He's just way cleaner and a lot more slick and loose. He throws nice combos. He picks his shots better. And when you look at Hafez, his striking isn't bad. He also is an explosive guy, and he's like a big, bulky guy, but a little bit stiff. He likes to throw 3-2s and 1-2s, and if he lands, he has power. I've seen him drop guys. I've seen him hurt guys, but he isn't going to be able to compete long-term with Maddalena on the feet. He's too hittable. He gets a little bit awkward in his defense sometimes, and he's definitely going to want to try to mix in the takedowns. And he has good grappling for sure. Like, his grappling is pretty high level. If he can get on top of Maddalena, that could be a big issue. He likes to get into dominant positions. He'll look for submissions. He could chain submissions together. And sometimes he has gone for a lot of submissions early and then ended up not getting them and gassing himself out and getting held down and losing that way. But his submission game and grappling game is pretty good. And the issue is, though, he doesn't really do a great job setting up the takedowns, and he isn't a great wrestler, so he tends to keep it on the feet a lot, and I think that could be a big factor here, especially with him not sharpening up the wrestling prior to this fight and it already being kind of a difficult thing for him to get inside in certain fights and hit those takedowns. I think Jack Della is going to be able to use that pressure, his long range, in and out striking, his accuracy, his shot selection, attacking the body, coming up to the head, just his UFC experience and training for Sean Brady, even though I think Jack Della's grappling and takedown defense is a little questionable, and actually was going to go with Brady in that fight, but whole training camp for a beast like Brady, he's going to be working on that grappling takedown defense, and I think that if Hafez doesn't catch him early with a big shot, then that's his best path to victory. And it's already going to be sharp defensively from Madalena, who had a full camp for a gorilla that was going to be trying to take him down for 15 minutes. So I think Jack Della is going to be able to find that finish and could be a little bit more competitive than people believe early. Maybe even Hafez will take him down, but I think in the second round he'll be tired, and I think Jack Della will finish him off and knock him out. In this next fight, this should be a really good fight, back and forth striking war with Melquizael Costa taking on Austin Lingo. And Costa's a very good striker. He's skilled, fast, he can switch stances, great kicks. He attacks all parts of the body. He throws kicks from both stances really well. And he has good front kicks, round kicks, spin kicks. He has fast hands too, good counters. He has nice counter crosses, nice counter lead hooks. And he'll explode in with punch combos. He throws heat. He definitely is the more diverse and better striker in this fight to me, especially on the outside. He's a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's a dog. He likes to return with big punches right away when he gets hit. He's down to brawl, and he's never been finished with strikes. He needs to be a little bit careful about throwing kicks in punching range, but I believe he should have the technical advantage on the feet against Austin Lingo, especially when they're at distance. And he's a pretty good grappler, but just not a good wrestler. Costa can be taken down, and he'll attack the legs. He'll throw up submissions. He likes to create scrambles, and he has a couple submission wins. He mostly uses his submissions or butterfly guard and attacks off his back to get back up to his feet. But good grapplers can hold him down, and I don't know if Lingo's on that level to hold a guy down like Costa, I think, has the superior grappling. And Costa has to improve his wrestling so he doesn't lose his fights just by getting stalled against a cage or on his back. But his last fight, he, ended up giving his back to a jiu-jitsu world champion in Thiago Moises and got choked out. But he also got up a couple times after getting taken down, and that proves something to me that he's working on his grappling and getting better. And it's a far less dangerous opponent on the ground in Austin Lingo in front of him for this fight. Cardio-wise, Costa has good cardio, and he's an intense guy. In Austin Lingo, he's also intense. He's all action. He has 4 finishes inside of 1 minute. And he's a solid boxer. He likes to walk fighters down. He'll cut the cage off. He'll double jab his way into range. Good 1-2. He has good double jab lead hooks. He's good in the pocket, and he has nice one-punch knockout power. And he throws some good low kicks, but he's pretty one-dimensional. And against Luis Saldana, he really struggled to get inside until Saldana got tired and injured, which Costa likely isn't going to do. And Saldana just uses movement, and Lingo couldn't really cut the cage off. And Lingo is very heavy on his lead leg. He's in a boxing stance a lot, so he can get his legs chopped down. He's been hurt to the body, and he's tough. He keeps pressuring for 3 rounds in most of his fights, but taking a lot of damage. We just saw Nate Landwehr take out Lingo in their last fight, hurt him and then submit him. And Lingo's not the best grappler. He does use his punches to back guys up and clinch him against the cage, and his wrestling is subpar. He also can be taken down very easily, but in this fight, I think maybe he's going to be trying to push Costa against the fence and then maybe break off and land punches and clinch him again and win that way. So Costa be ready for that. But Lingo's a good guillotine, and I don't really see him catching it in this one, but that's kind of a bad tendency as well because he tends to jump guillotine on a lot of opponents. But he has good get-ups, and I feel like this is going to be a more stand-up fight anyways. But I feel like Costa is going to win this one. I think he's actually going to catch him with a spinning back kick to the body and just be the superior striker and get the win. So I'm going to go with Costa by second-round knockout. And up next, I don't really got a lot to say about this matchup. Total pass for me from a betting perspective, and I'm just going to watch it as a fan. But Dudakova versus Nunes, it's a female fight here. And Viktoriya Dudakova, she's making her UFC debut. She's taking on a girl in Istela Nunes who's 0-3 in the UFC so far, but has faced good competition and has shown flashes, hurting girls, dropping girls, and just hasn't been able to close the show. But Dudakova, she got a UFC contract a little over a year ago through the Contender Series, but in that fight, she hurt her knee, so had to take time off for cover, and now she's back a little bit over a year later. Istela Nunes, her last fight was against Denise Hargui, where she ended up dropping Hargui in the first round, but ended up, started to lose those boxing combinations in the inside and got the worst of it. And ended up getting finished on the ground in the second. And Nunes does tend to get tired, so she starts fast and then gets finished late usually. But when you look at Dudakova, I'm not too impressed with her overall. I feel like she has very rudimentary striking, and Nunes has a huge advantage on the feet, and she's much better with her footwork and athleticism, and Dudakova stands straight up and down like a board, so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Nunes caught her in the first round and took her out, but Dudakova has good grappling, good wrestling, and if she can get in there and take down Nunes and start to embrace that grind, I think Nunes will wilt. She's kind of a flake type of fighter, and Dudakova can maybe get her out of there in the second or third, so I'm going with Dudakova. I mean, she is an IMAF champion, and maybe that knee injury and just her other fights, she wasn't fighting to her full potential in the fights that I watched, so I'm not sure, but I'm going to go Dudakova, but little to no confidence. I feel like this is a pass because I would say dogger pass, but I just don't have a lot of trust in Nunes either, so I'm going with Dudakova to win this one. I'll even say she gets a finish in the third by submission. And up next we got a fun fight with Tucker Lutz and Melsik Baghdasaryan. Both these guys are prospects and need to bounce back wins. Lutz lost 2 in a row. He won his UFC debut, hasn't won since. Baghdasaryan, he lost his last fight as well, and he was on the cusp of the top 15. He fought a really good opponent in Josh Culibao and ended up kind of losing that fight pretty convincingly, getting finished. So step down in competition in a fight Baghdasaryan is favored to win, but only slightly. And Lutz, he's a skilled offensive fighter. His striking technique is clean offensively. He has a very nice counter left hand. He likes to slip and then land that left hook. And he's always switching stances. He's a tricky guy. He has great counter combos off the back foot. He has clean kicks too. Hard leg kicks, hard body kicks. He tends to throw a lot of his kicks from southpaw. And he'll also rip the body with right hooks or throw straight left hands. And his right hand is accurate. He likes to throw that left hook straight right hand combination. And he's very fast and sharp. He has clean punching and kicking technique. His defense is kind of his offense, though, which is why he could struggle against pressure. He'll return with clean, accurate shots. And fighters that can kind of walk through his punches can land on him, land big counters. He has 6 knockout wins, but since taking that step up in competition and fighting on the Contender Series in 2020, he has had 5 fights and no finishes, so seems to maybe have pop, but not that fight-ending power, and fighters have been able to kind of walk through his punches, and Lutz doesn't move his head, and he can be countered and clipped big, and he has a chin, and he hasn't been finished with strikes yet, but he got knocked down against Daniel Pineda twice, and he ended up getting hurt a little bit in his other fight as well. But he's fighting a guy that's a beast on the feet, but I think his striking and boxing is actually better, and he just has to be weary of staying at range and worrying about the kicks. But I anticipate he's going to try to wrestle in this fight. Lutz has good timing, and he sets his takedowns up well with distracting strikes, good feints. I've really only seen Lutz shoot double legs and not much else, but he has fast shots, and he has the cardio to get multiple takedowns a fight. He had 4 takedowns on his Contender Series win. He had 3 in his UFC debut, and he's strong in the clinch too. And I think he's going to look to live there in this fight, try to force Baghdasaryan in the clinch, knee him, eventually try to get that double, take him down. And even if he can't hold him down, he just can get him tired and kind of grind him out. And his takedown defense is not the best, but I believe he's going to be the far superior wrestler and grappler in this fight. And cardio-wise, Lutz has pretty decent cardio. He does get a little bit tired, and I think both these guys will slow down, but if it's a grappling heavy fight, I think Lutz will have the better cardio, and if it's a more striking heavy fight, then I think they'll probably both have similar type cardio in the later rounds. But Baghdasaryan, he is a lethal striker. He's an Armenian kickboxer. He trains with Edmund Tarverdian, who say what you want about his MMA coaching skills, but he can coach striking, and he has proven it with certain guys, and Baghdasaryan is another one. And on the feet, Melsik starts fast. He's extremely aggressive, pressures really effectively, cuts the cage off, very, very speedy. He has a nice straight left hand and powerful kicks. He stands southpaw, and he kind of uses his speed and aggression to back guys up and overwhelm them. In the clinch, he has hard knees, and if fighters aren't ready to deal with Baghdasaryan's aggression and speed early, it could be a quick night for them. He isn't a big combination puncher, though. He tends to be one and done, especially after the first round. And defensively, he holds his hands low. And I think in boxing range, the hand combos of Lutz couldn't give him trouble and land on him. Melsik is going to stay more in kicking range in this fight. He has power, but I think it's not as pronounced as it looks. A lot of guys he's fought have taken a lot of clean shots and stayed in there. And he has 3 boxing fights. He has no knockouts in those fights. He has 3 Muay Thai fights that I saw. He didn't knock anyone out in those. And in the UFC, he doesn't have many knockouts. I think if he can land a big high kick or a knee, then he can end it. But he doesn't have crazy punching power. And his takedown defense is good, but he can be taken down. And he can be held in the clinch. And I believe that he's probably going to be able to get up and do decently in the clinch as well early, but if he starts to get tired, then his grappling could go south, and we saw Josh Kulabau submit him in his last fight, and I feel like the line has closed to where it's a little bit more appropriate now, but it was a little bit off at the beginning, and Baghdasaryan is great stand-up, but I think Lutz has the better hands. He can land counters, and I think the wrestling is advantage for Lutz, as well as the cardio if he could try to push the clinch and make it more of a wrestling heavy fight. The first round could be a rough round, but I think after that Lutz is going to take over, so I'm actually going to pick Tucker Lutz to get a slight upset and win a decision in this one. And this next fight, in terms of fan friendliness to watch, it should be an incredible fight, but picking it, man, I mean, I don't really got a lot to say. It's hard to give a prediction in this one. We got Nazim Sadykhov, who I believe is very green. He hasn't fought very many guys. He hasn't been pro for that long. And he's shown flashes, but even his last fight, he was a little bit lucky to win that one. And he's fighting a guy with way more experience than him in Terrance McKinney, who has 18 fights. He has 4, 5, 6 UFC fights, but he fights like a guy with no experience whatsoever. So it's like, does that even really matter? Nazim is the one that fights way more composed, and I believe is going to have the advantage as the fight goes on. And McKinney has a big chance to win early like he does against anybody, and especially more in this fight because Nazim is a very technical boxer. He's composed, but he likes to load up in the pocket, man, throw those hooks, uppercuts, and that's why Elder caught him and dropped him, and I've seen him hurt in other fights early. And McKinney has that speed and that explosiveness with the killer crosses, 1-2s. He has those flying knees. So if he can land early and kind of render Sadykhov unconscious, then that's going to be all she wrote real quick. But obviously we've seen what happens if McKinney gets extended. He's kind of a glass cannon. He doesn't take damage well. Cardio falls off a cliff. When you back him up and hit him, he doesn't have good reactions whatsoever to being hit. His defense kind of falls apart, and Sadykhov has far superior composure, and on the inside in the pocket, his boxing is just on another level. And McKinney also is the better wrestler by a pretty significant margin, and he could hold Sadykhov against a cage, but Sadykhov, he trains with Sarah Longo and those guys, so his grappling is on point, and he's shown decent takedown defense, especially against the cage. And I don't think McKinney has the wrestling to stall a guy out or get constant takedowns over 3 rounds, so it's a tough one, man. I mean, maybe McKinney's going to catch him early. I think that's like a 50-50 chance, or Sadykhov is going to be able to kind of use his pressure, boxing, composure to kind of snuff out McKinney over time and then finish him. So I feel like this fight's probably going to be less than 5 minutes, or definitely less than 10. And I'm going to go Sadykhov, but fight that I believe could go either way, to be honest with you. And man, just like the last fight, this is another one where it's like kill or be killed, probably less than a 5-minute fight. I have a little bit more of an opinion on this one. Ottman Azaitar, he came back after that long layoff, had a disaster of a return where there was a nice little build-up with him and Matt Frevola where one fight got canceled and they started to kind of dislike each other, and then Frevola knocked him out quick, man, and now he's trying to bounce back from that. That was his first loss. Prado, he was also 13-0, went in there against Jamie Malarkey, and that fight, it wasn't really that close, but Prado had some moments and lasted the full distance, and that's a lot of experience. I mean, before that, Prado had finished everyone that he had fought and was fighting more lower-level guys, and now he went 15 full minutes as a 21-year-old with a borderline top 15 opponent. I think that's going to do him a lot of good. And Azaitar, he's older, man. He's 33 years old, and he hasn't fought a lot recently. He hasn't won a fight since 2020, and I feel like he has big power and decent wrestling, and he's explosive. He comes forward, ready to brawl, but I think Prado is the much cleaner striker. I think he has a little bit better combinations. I think he picks his shots a little bit better. He's a little slicker, a little faster, a little bit tighter defensively, and I think Prado has the better grappling as well. So ultimately, I'm going with the younger guy and what I think is going to be a firefight, the guy that didn't just get knocked out. So I think Prado's going to go in there, and I think he's going to smoke Ottman Azaitar in the first round. And up next year, we have an interesting fight, 145-pound fight. And I know they've said they've been doing away with the division, but, man, I feel like this is the most 145-pound fights in, like, a month, 2-month span in UFC history. Like, they've been churning out a few 145-pound women fights. It hasn't been many, but I'm just saying. But, yeah, Norma Dumont versus Chelsea Chandler. It's an interesting one because Chelsea Chandler, she's shown flashes where she looks like she could be a fun addition to the UFC. Like, she can get finishes, she can talk a little bit, and she's very aggressive and is someone that has a fan-friendly style every time she goes out there. So they're pushing her up to the top, partly because of that and partly because there's not really many people to fight. But Norma Dumont has been kind of that 145-pound gatekeeper. You could almost call her the quasi 145-pound champ to me because she's been the only girl fighting at 145, and she's been, kind of beating all of them. She did lose to Macy Chiasson, but I know she had an injury leading into that fight. She had missed weight, so that was a rough one. But she has several other wins at 145. She's coming off a victory over Carol Hosa, who's a pretty good fighter. And experience-wise, she's fought way better opposition. I mean, you look at Chelsea Chandler's level of opponents, the people that she's fought. Last fight was her UFC debut, and even in that one, she was fighting Stoliarenko, who's, to me, not really a great fighter, not UFC level. And before the UFC, she fought a lot of lower-level girls, older girls, and now Norma Dumont signifies by far the best fighter that she's ever fought. And Chandler, she's very aggressive. She comes forward. She throws kind of sloppy hands, but she has power. And Dumont is way cleaner. I mean, way better overall striking technicality. And she is going to be able to probably land clean on Chandler as Chandler comes in. But Chandler has that kind of... She trains with the scrap pack, and she has that aggression that you see in kind of like a Macy Barber or some of these other prospects you could think of that are similar to that, where they maybe aren't the best technically, but they can come forward and they have that aggression and power that can kind of counteract that. And one thing about Norma Dumont that we've seen is her chin is a little bit questionable. So I think that Chandler has a decent chance to land some power shots on the feet and hurt Dumont. But Dumont has that jab. She is also a girl that likes to sit in the pocket and throw heat and throw counters. And I've seen Chandler get hit with counter punches against Courtney King and get rocked and have really bad defense. And Courtney King is like a real awkward, sloppy striker. So I think Dumont is going to have a big advantage on the feet. And I think, honestly, both these girls have a chance to knock each other out. And as far as the wrestling and grappling goes, Chandler is someone that pushes hard to get takedowns, and she has good grappling. But like I said, she hasn't really fought anyone like Dumont who has good takedown defense, and I don't think that her wrestling is that technical. I think that Dumont has seen way better wrestlers, so Dumont's wrestling is a little bit suspect, but her grappling is good, and I think in this one she's going to have the wrestling to keep it standing. And ultimately, Chandler is impressive, and she has a chance because she brings that finishing ability to the female weight class, and she has that aggression and power/pressure that I was talking about. But Dumont, I think the technicality and experience is going to be too much. I think that she's just the far superior striker. She's going to be able to land counters and either hurt and submit Chandler or TKO her. So I'm going to Norma Dumont. I'll say she wins in the second. And in the co-main event, hell of a main event, co-main event, with Albert Duraev taking on Jung Park. And I'm not going to hate on Jung Park too much. That guy is fun to watch. I saw Albert's interview today. He was saying that Park is usually a boring guy. I don't know which fights he watched of Park, but to me, Jung Park's usually at bangers, and Duraev has actually been in some fun fights too. So from a fun standpoint, I'm looking forward to it. And it's an interesting matchup. We got Duraev, who has that obviously Russian wrestling heavy style, and his striking is a lot better than people give him credit for, but questionable chin, gets tired, and will get really sloppy. And it seems like when he starts to get hit and go downhill, he goes really downhill. And Jung Park, he is the more composed guy. He's well-rounded in his own right, and he has pretty good striking, nice jab. But when you look at Duraev, it's definitely going to be him looking for the double, looking to back Park up and push him against the cage. But I think that Duraev's size is something that he struggles with at 185. I feel like he's a little bit better suited for 170. And also the speed and footwork and kind of foot speed of Park, I think, is going to be a big issue. When we saw him versus Buckley's ability to move and kind of dart in, dart out really bothered Duraev. Duraev is a good counterpuncher. Like, he has a nice jab. He'll counter with the check hook. He has pretty good front kicks and round kicks to the head. And if you stick in the pocket with him, he can kind of use his striking effectively and land some nice shots. But if you can move, use your foot speed and ability to get in, get out, touch him, and kind of get out of position or pull him into shots and then move, then he could really find himself lost in that no man's range. And he doesn't set his takedowns up very good, so he could struggle to actually get takedowns. And when he does shoot, they're very kind of easy to defend or easy to see. And when he starts to not get the takedowns, his whole game starts to fall apart. He'll get sloppy, and he needs to get the takedowns to get to dominant position to be effective in this fight especially. And I think Park has the footwork and the boxing, the 1-2s, the pull 2s, pull 1-2s, and ability to finesse Duraev. And his takedown defense has also been good, and he's also shown good takedown offense and overall grappling, get-ups, and things like that. So I believe Park has the antidote to counteract the wrestling of Duraev and just needs to avoid getting held against the cage for large portions of time. And I also believe that he has the cardio edge here and the durability edge, composer edge. So I feel like Park is going to put some damage on Duraev, and I think he actually can get him out of there down the stretch. So I'm going to go with Park to win this one via third round KO TKO. And up next here we got, one of the worst 4 words that a hardcore UFC fan has heard in their life in recent memory, which is another Holm main event. And Holm coming in here taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. Her last fight, she went in there against Yana Kunitskaya, another kind of stinker fight, but she looked good. She dominated, and if you remember her previous fight before that, the 5-round fight with Ketlin Souza, that fight was horrible, man. I mean, it was just Holly hugging her against the cage for 20 out of the 25 minutes, doing no damage, and Ketlin doing minimal damage throughout the whole fight and getting controlled for 90% of it. But since Holly did no damage, they gave Ketlin the win, and Holly was real mad about it. But man, I mean, with Mayra Bueno Silva, if Holly wins, it's going to be a horrible fight to me. I mean, Mayra Bueno Silva, in my opinion, is the more athletic girl with the better striking. I think that Holm's striking is solid. I mean, she obviously has great kicks. She's athletic. Her boxing is on point, but she's older. She doesn't have that same explosiveness and speed anymore. She doesn't have that same ability to get in, get out with combinations anymore. And Mayra Bueno Silva, her aggressiveness, her pressure, the speed in her kicks, her front kicks, her leg kicks are going to be, there, man. I feel like she's going to land on Holm. I think she's going to be able to back Holm up. And hands-wise, Silva's hands aren't that good, but she has power when she does throw and speed, so that's kind of all you need. She isn't that technical with her hands, but this isn't a boxing match, and Holm isn't going to be a girl that pressures and tries to stay in the pocket like that anyways. And Silva's kicks are real dangerous in this fight, man. I think at range, Silva is going to have a pretty significant edge. She's going to be throwing more volume, throwing with more heat. And Holm is going to have to close the distance, clinch her against the cage, put the size on her, use the strength, and, hug her, drain the gas tank. And then she could start to maybe get in, get out with her darting in shots. And when Silva's a little bit more tired, the athleticism that Holm has lost maybe won't matter anymore. But I don't think that Holm is going to want to take her down because Silva's a beast on the ground, man. I mean, extremely dangerous guard. She started to work a lot of leg locks. She got a leg lock in her last fight. And I know that's something that Holm is not going to want to fuck with is those leg locks. She's had a lot of knee injuries and things like that. So ultimately, I think it's going to be coming down to a kind of a fight IQ and cardio test for Silva. Is Silva going to be low volume like she was against Manon Ferro and just kind of taunt and let Holm be kind of minimally offensive and beat her? Or is she going to open up and kind of put it on Holm, back her up, and maybe even finish her, but definitely get the victory? Or is she going to kind of let Holm clinch her against the fence for 5 rounds in a boring fight? So we're going to have to figure it out. But I feel like Silva, she is getting more towards her prime, and her confidence level has to be skyrocketing with the 3 wins in a row. And I think she might feel like she found her weight class. The division is wide open right now. And I'm going with a new breed in this one, man. I've gone with Holly Holm in a lot of these certain type of fights, and I feel like I have a pretty good read on Holly Holm and her overall fight style at this point in her career. And a lot of it is predicated just on strength and her grappling now. And I don't feel like she's going to be comfortable grappling on the floor with Silva, so it's going to be her just hugging her against the cage. And we've seen in, recent fights, like the fight I just talked about with Ketlin, where the judges aren't rewarding that as much anymore as they are the damage, even if it's extremely minimal damage. So I think Silva's going to land the more eye-popping, damaging shots. And if Holm can't control the clinch heavily, I think she could even get stopped. And I'm going to go with Mayra by 3rd round sub in this one. I feel like maybe Holm will get desperate enough where she actually does take her down and ends up getting caught and submitted in this one. So I'm going with Silva with the slight upset. And I feel like she's going to maybe make it look a little bit easy. Maybe be the, cleanest victory over Holly Holm that we've seen maybe outside of Amanda Nunes. So I'm going with Mayra Bueno Silva in this one to surprise people, pull the upset. And there you have it, guys. That's a full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Vegas 77. Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. And as far as part of the week goes and my most confident pick, for the part of the week, I'm going to go with Alex Munoz and Azat Maksum. And for my most confident pick, I'll go with Azat Maksum as my pick. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back next week breaking down another fight card. If you want access to the Patreon, go to patreon.com/MPredictionsGuru. I got 8 or 9 bets for this fight card already. I'm feeling pretty confident about some of the money that I have laid down in the spots that I got. And coming off a good week last week where we won some money on 2 events, 2 for 2 on the 2 events that we bet on. So come on over, join the Patreon. And besides that, man, put some comments down below, put some likes down on the video. And I'll talk to you guys later.